Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Frank and Stan chat. For those of you watching on video, you'll see that we have Ross McGill back with us again. Hello, Ross.
Hi,
Hi, Rob.
Frank and Stan. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for coming back. Ross of the Teacher Toolkit fame, the website that many people have visited. So, how's that going, Ross?
Well, it's my day job. It's what turned off. It was a hobby, writing away in my life as a teacher, and now it's my day job. And I guess it's one of those privileges where you can turn something you love into something that you get paid to do. So it's a constant headache in some respects. All the data privacy, protecting people's credit cards, blogs and dealing with spam and trolls and all those kind of things. But it's still there. No one's switched it off. People are still reading it. It's just gone past 20 million visitors. So
That's
yeah, it's good
phenomenal,
fun. I
that,
enjoy
isn't it?
it,
God,
and it's good therapy for me writing away, and people still want to read it, which is good.
do you do it on your own?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go through phases, peaks and troughs, I suppose. I guess in the very early days, I used to have, I'll write a blog for you, you write a blog for me, and kind of thing. And then there was different kind of themes as the blog world immersed. So we'd write about a topic one month, and everyone would write a blog on their blog or swap it over. And then I moved into probably prior to the pandemic, I probably had about 30 or 40 teachers writing full time inside the blog. So we were farming out two or three blogs a day, and that was a lot of work
Yeah.
and a lot of content. But then I slowed it down, and the most popular bloggers switched into books and things like that. But it's yeah, I would say the blog's now me. So for the last 4 or 5 years since the pandemic, having to kind of batten down the hatches in some respects. So for my workload, I just put out two blogs a week. It's sometimes classroom topics such as marking and behaviour. Most of it is about academic research or things that I'm fascinated by. Very occasionally, it's about education politics, academisation, Bridget Phillipson, etc. But yeah, I try not to set myself up to fail. I used to, get blog out every day, and then you just leave a
Oh,
bit
wow, no,
upset.
no.
So
Yeah.
now a couple of weeks is enough, and then it kind of synchronizes into the newsletter and social media kind of things, and that's enough for regular fans to read. Um, yeah,
I've been following. I mean, you've been out and about recently, haven't you? I mean,
I have. Yeah, I was down in is it Camberley in Surrey? I was at Collinwood College on Monday. A great body of staff, couple of sites. They're desperate for a brand new building, but doing some amazing work despite some kind of infrastructure challenges they have in their school. I'm off to Liverpool to visit a trainee teacher on Friday morning and visit a kind of ed tech organisation that gathers the data from every primary school in the country and then sends it off to the DFE. So I'm looking forward to catching up with them. Angel Solutions, some of you might have heard of, and yeah, I'm in schools about roughly 2 times a week. That's enough for me because it's exhausting
yeah.
around the country physically and trying to manage the online blog as well as everything else and be a dad and a husband. It's busy. It's enough. It's
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. How are you, Stan, this morning? I don't think you're 100% this morning, are you?
I'm suffering from a bad cough, so I will try and mute if I burst into massive coughing fits.
Have you been on the Lemsips yet?
Uh, Night nurse is
Night
my
nurse.
go-to because it knocked me out.
Yeah,
So
night
it's on
nurse
the
is good for
basis that
that.
night nurse is on the list of banned substances for sports people.
Is it? I
Oh, is
So
wouldn't
I
be
it?
reckon
surprised with the
if
drugs
it's
wise.
on the
Yeah,
list because it does something to them, it must work.
yeah. No, that's you could take that by accident, and they can see why people get banned, can't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
So night nurse knocks me out, and then but it's not stopped the cough.
yeah. I mean, Ross, you were on, well, was it last year? I think it was. And I think,
Yeah,
again, sort of reached out. It's lovely to have you back. I think one of the things that we talked about last time was around the collection of books at the back there and how you become fascinated with sort of like neurological issues. Yeah. And
yes.
I mean, I think we're talking before the chat about some interest that you've got at the moment with regard to that, and I think that's fed into some of your recent books, perhaps on
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I guess the challenge having delved into brain anatomy and cognition and things. And the world's fixated, or teaching profession quite rightly is fixated with cognitive load and working memory today, which is good because back in the day it was never a thing. And the more we understand about how we process, the more important we can help kids. And we'll talk about this later. Be engaged in class, and teachers can help kids enjoy the content that they're teaching them in more effective ways. So as I delve into more academic research, trying to understand a neuron, and we have about 100 trillion connections in our brain, and every single brain's different. It reminds me of ADHD students, neurodiverse students in my classrooms, and MRI scans have only been around for about 40-ish years or so. So we've learnt more about the brain in 4 decades than we have in 4,000 years. So it's still quite new and exciting, and one of the most popular fields at the moment is cognitive science. Neuroscientists. There's a massive explosion of this kind of research field, and I guess my niche is something called neuroeducation. And when you dig into this, you can have something called neuroaesthetics, so the design, so branding and things like that, and what makes people get excited by brands and colors. So me being a design and technology teacher, that's interesting. But the MRI stuff and the ADHD brain, when you look at MRI maps, you can start to see patterns in behavior and how neurons might stay active in ADHD brains compared to someone who's neurotypical. I think there's important messages for us all. So I'll think of the name shortly, but there's an educationalist out there. I'll have to just think about it in a second
Yeah,
and
yeah,
come
yeah.
back. But I remember him talking to me. One day, head teachers might be given MRI scans of children in their schools, and controversies aside, that would be quite a powerful bit of data on entry to your school, knowing what students' needs are, rather than as, in some respects, leaving it to surface guesswork.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So I've got another book deal kind of signed, and it'll be delving deeper into cognitive science. But the biggest challenge is for teachers trying to keep it practical, easy to digest, something they can read quite quickly. So that's what I'll be working on over the next year.
It's interesting because Dave McPartland, I'll give Dave a shout out. He's the head of Flake Fleet
Yeah, I
Primary.
know David. Yeah,
I can say this because he actually put it on social media recently, but he had an ADHD diagnosis recently,
right.
and he's very clear what a difference that's made to him. The fact that it's not the fact that it helps him resolve some of the challenges he has, in terms of how he manages himself and how he manages others, but actually the fact that he was able to have some sort of understanding about why he was the way he was.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you on
Really
my travels, when I
significant.
talk about this publicly to teachers about things that I'm teaching myself, every single time I'll have 2 or 3 members of staff come up to me at the end and think, I've recently been diagnosed, or I think I might have,
Yeah.
or thank you for sharing that. That's fascinating. And, the message is rippling through to leadership and behavior systems and exclusions and all those kind of things, and how we might adapt some of the things that we do in not just our classrooms, but structurally across the school. So yeah, I think it's an important conversation. 30, 40 years ago, it was, my brother, the whole playground were chasing around the school, and now we know why. He was undiagnosed ADHD. So yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
I think one of the other things, because before we chatted, before we started recording, we were chatting about children and grandchildren, and I do remember when I was a head teacher, we admitted into our reception class a child who had been born after about, I think, 25 weeks, and had been very, very challenging birth, very challenging.
Mhm.
And the parents were very, very keen that we understood that there was some delayed development going on here. That actually this was not a sort of a straightforward sort of child's born, the normal route of stepping
Yes.
stones towards getting towards primary school. And I remember feeling at the time how helpful that was to have that sort of knowledge. And later on, when I started to do analysis around how well children perform in infant schools, how much little knowledge schools and teachers had of the journey before they came to school. So
Hmm.
it's if they're, this sense of school readiness can be affected by so many other factors that actually it's as if they're plonked
Yeah.
on, and there's assumption, this is like a production line. We've got our 30 reception children, 60
Absolutely.
or 90, and here they go,
Probably one of the most important lessons that I've had over the last 8 years since I've been in schools all across the country is the world of early years and how significant it is in those early stages. And, even 1, 2, 3 years prior to starting in early years formally, uh, in those 3 years of life, children can have such a mixed bag of opportunities that's quite critical in going back to the brain formation of neurons and personalities and characteristics. I've remembered the chap Barry Carpenter. I think was a
All
former head
right, right,
teacher.
right.
He's written a couple of books, but he's well renowned in SEND and premature world and things like that. And I first connected with Barry a few years ago, and he was the chap that talked about MRI scans and how it would be quite a valuable piece of information
Yeah,
to help diagnose or guide our interventions.
yeah. Well, as not, I'm not an expert on neurological issues, but actually, it is an area where you think there's so much to learn. And I think as we have got our own children, but more important, our own grandchildren, and you see them developing, you just
Yeah.
see things emerging. Probably, no more now than we did when we were
Yeah.
parents. So,
I'll share a link with you later, and you can put it in the podcast
that'd
notes
be
for people
brilliant.
to read. But our key message from reading this latest piece of research was that ADHD, it's not a behavior issue, it's a brain issue. And that when we switch off, our neurons don't send signals, whereas if you're ADHD, they're in constant transmission state,
Yeah,
which on the surface looks like I'm fidgeting and not relaxing, whereas a neurotypical person, I can sit quietly and listen
yeah,
actively without speaking or fidgeting. So yeah, interesting stuff. But I'll share the link and you can
brilliant.
share it with people watching and listening.
Lovely. Right, Stan, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, I think it's quite closely linked to all this. It's just a simple tweet that was in, I think it was yesterday, where I think it was might be a group called Parents View, but I might have got that wrong, saying that looking at attendance and school reluctance, we need to make school more fun, they said. I would agree with them. I would use the word engaging rather than fun,
Mm,
because what fun did was spark off all the responses you'd expect of, children aren't here to have fun, children are here to learn. Learning must be hard. Well, why must learning be hard? I don't understand people with a mentality that says it's got to be tough, you've got to be hard, you can't enjoy yourself.
mm,
If you're smiling, there must be something wrong with the technique of teaching, all that kind of stuff. And it just made me think, you know, people write that off, but actually, when you consider as an adult why you go to work, actually enjoyment is a really big part of why you go to work. I know people say you go to work to get paid, but I'll bet most people in jobs they enjoy maybe can't even tell you what their
mm.
monthly salary is or weekly wage is, because what draws you to the job, what draws you to the occupation is the fact it's interesting to you, it's engaging. And I remember my boss saying to me, everybody wants to have a laugh at work at some point. And if you're going to work and you're never laughing, then maybe you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. Actually, there's this thing, isn't there, around schools that I've been involved in. Even if I remember the first headship I had, it was pre-Ofsted days, but if it had Ofsted, we wouldn't be anywhere near the top
There's a
category.
life in teaching prior to Ofsted, isn't there? It's a
Yeah,
different.
but actually, Russ, the thing is that it had a really, we're in the mire. My first headship, I was sort of very inexperienced as a leader, but there was a really good crack. People were supporting each other. It was a difficult school to be in. And actually, of all the schools I've been involved in, that's probably one of the most enjoyable places.
Yeah, I would probably
Actually,
say if I could put a grade to each of the schools that I worked in, I had more fun in the requires
yeah,
improvements.
yeah.
I don't know why.
No,
Is it, either the personality or the rigor or the type of character that wanted
Yeah,
to work in those
isn't it
types of settings.
because you've got to have in what we'll call tough schools, you have to have a different relationship with the students.
Yes,
And
and you
so
have,
there has to be more of you in it.
and I wouldn't like to summarize Ofsted by the grades that kids get and their poverty scores and things like that, but that'd be quite foolish to summarize Ofsted like that. But let's keep it simple. Those kind of students come from tougher backgrounds, and you tend to have to work hard to relate to them a lot more and have fun and make lessons very engaging. Um, Work really hard to keep them focused throughout the lesson. And outside your classroom, there can be lots of other things going on that you may or may not know about that would be make people's eyes water today, just thinking about some of the stories I've seen in my career.
I think it was also you have to work harder to make sure that the students, well, it's probably true of reluctant students as well, that there's a relevance to the learning. That actually you have to sort of explain where this is leading to more. Whereas if you're just there and you're sort of engaged with learning, you're on the sort of the crest of a wave with it. It's all coming. And I think successful people tend, well, it's probably true, is it, that successful in the past, perhaps, successful politicians have been sort of probably academically more successful. So they found it quite hard to understand, well, why is learning difficult? I do remember Secretary of State saying to me, well, hang on a minute, why can they do this here and you can't do it there? And I'm thinking, yeah, because you've never visited there. You
Yeah,
don't know what it's like there. You
going
make
back
some
to those
assumptions.
words that Stan mentioned, yeah, I think it's a misnomer, really, the word fun and hard.
Yeah,
And I think we talked about this just before we started that it's that engagement rather than fun.
yeah,
And we want kids to be engaged. And engagement, if we break down what is engagement, well, engagement could be me turning up to class on time, putting my hand up in class, completing work to a higher standard, not just laughing in class. So,
mm,
you can get into the linguistics and definitions. And of course, learning should be hard, but people don't understand the learning process. That learning, the most powerful learning, you get into your study skills and things like that through stories, mnemonics, imagery, those kind of things. Um, it, the part of the learning process also involves forgetting, but if you don't retrieve it, then you're not
Yeah.
actively storing the information. So whatever you're teaching kids, that's part of the learning process. So I think these phrases are easy to say. Learning should be fun and learning should be hard. But breaking them down, people that often say these things probably don't have the defense that I've just maybe
Yeah,
articulated
yeah,
here, breaking down the details. Was it a parent website, Stan?
yeah. I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, so not all parents are teachers, and I'm not a builder and a painter and a lawyer. So I guess once you're outside your field, you kind of lack that knowledge, don't you, to understand the details.
Now that actually leads very nicely, doesn't it, Ross, into what's caught your eye this week.
Yes, yeah, no, it does. Parent view. I got a parent survey alert from a school that my son used to attend to. So I've just literally updated my email alerts to the school that he's now in. But I went through the results, and it was interesting to see how the school's evolving. But I had beef, so to speak, with the parent view questions from the EIF framework in 2019. I think one of the questions was parents' perceptions about the quality of teaching in the school. And I believe that I've spent 30 years of my career trying to evaluate teaching more reliably. One of the key voices getting rid of Ofsted grades for lessons about 10 years ago, and continuing that critique with the current Ofsted report cards. But so here you're asking parents who are not specialists, who don't view any lessons at all, and asking them for a very concrete response, I suppose, in terms of yes or no, is the teaching good and things like that. And I don't think parents are in a position to evaluate it reliably. So then, let's say 90% of parents say the teaching is really poor. Then Ofsted could quite easily use that as a story for their inspections, and I suspect in some cases they have.
Mm.
So I've just got the questions here in front of me. Let me just dig
Just
them
to
out.
say, this is not part, they've not sought comments on this in the current
Yeah, so that's why I was worried about it, that it's not, I've not seen it at all mentioned in any of the new report card kind of proposals. So whether it's been abolished, I doubt it. I think they'll still want to gather parent views. They'll want to quite rightly gather pupil views about well-being, but still they will not go in and fish for teacher well-being views.
Yeah.
Other than an initial survey that staff may or may not respond to once the head teacher shares the survey. So there's 14 questions. I guess we're wanting a yes or a no and how parents will respond. But the first one's my child is happy at school. And I think most families can respond to that confidently. My child feels safe at school. And again, I think parents can respond confidently to that one. The school makes sure its pupils are well behaved. So I think this is a bit woolly
Yeah.
because most parents will have their journey to schools, perceptions,
Yeah, because most
immediate,
parents would get a view of that from dropping their kid off.
yeah, and
Actually
Facebook
seeing it in
comments
school.
and dropping
Yeah.
kids off, and if there's an incident, how it's resolved if a
Yeah.
mobile phone's stolen. So there's only that immediate bubble response rather than the collective things that are going across the school. So I think that question's woolly, but it's an important question, but I think it needs to be refined. Question 4, my child has been bullied and the school deal with it quickly and effectively. So I think that's a good question for parents. 5, the school makes me aware of what my child will learn during the year. So, think about curriculum plans and things like that. So I think that's a good question and parents can reliably respond to that. Question 6, when I've raised concerns with the school, they deal with it properly. So again, I think parents can respond to that. It might be, you can always refine these questions into quite precise topics to rather than leave them a bit open-ended. 7, we get into SEND. So does the school support my child if they have SEND? So I think that question could be optional, but it looks like it's a forced response for everybody. 8, the school has high expectations from a child. So, again, it's open to interpretation, this one, isn't it? Of what? Behavior, of curriculum, of exams, of extracurricular enrichment, things like that. 9, my child does well at this school. So, how would you define that? Are you talking about attendance, exam scores,
In
taking
relation
part
to how well I did at school.
clubs? Yeah, how I did at schools, you're
Yeah,
doing better than what I did. So, yeah, it's all
Doesn't do as well as
perceptions.
his brother. He doesn't do as well as his brother did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. His sister does better at this school than this one. Question 10, the school lets me know how my child is doing. So, that's a good question with the reports and things like that. Question 11, there is a good range of subjects available to my child. Whether parents are experts in curriculum and understand the EBAC parameters and what happens at Key Stage 4, I'm not so sure. Question 12, my child can take part in clubs and activities. I think that's an important question. 13, the school supports my child's wider personal development. And 14, I'd recommend the school to another parent. So the teaching question's gone, which is good. And I'm looking at this survey here from 2021-22 of a school that I've got on the screen here. So the questions, yeah, I think they were updated from 2019, but I think they might need another tweak again.
Somebody said on here a few weeks ago that the question that would be quite revealing would, my child feels included in this school.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah. And actually at the end of it, that's, together with my child feels happy at the school, I'd recommend this school. To me, when doing inspections, that recommended was always the one that was a bit of a,
Yeah, and I also think asking parents about their perceptions of other families and parents. So, when I take my son to school, I'm always thinking about some of his other friends in his class because that's all I really see or hear about.
yes, yes,
And there's one child I think of in particular who needs a bit of support internally and externally. And whether it's right to ask me as a parent to parent view about how that child's needs are met, so I wouldn't know so much, and it might again be a woolly question. But I guess when we go back to the word on inclusion, school
Yeah.
community is more about my own child and me. It's also
yeah,
about,
yeah,
I look at all the Facebook comments that are kicking off, and I'm a governor of this school, so I've got to be quite careful about. I just don't reply to anything. That's the best rule of thumb. But you really want to when people say, "Oh, learning should be hard," or uh,
yeah.
lessons should be fun," or the shoveling. That there was one comment: the head teacher's out shoveling the snow, and all the parents are whinging. Well, why aren't you shoveling the pavements? Because we can't actually get on the road. We can't walk to the school because of the pavement. So it's like you can't win.
No, yeah,
You either post stuff on Facebook or you don't, or you turn comments off or you don't. And
Yeah.
when you deal with 1,000 or 2,000 parents, you're always going to have that many views. So
funny. Yeah, I think also there's this thing around. I think I've come to better understand the role of the school within the community as I've got older, and the importance of that. I think COVID brought that home even more.
COVID really did
Actually,
for me. When I think of people picking up my bins on the street, the
yeah,
very early days of COVID, someone still out in the street posting my, letters through the letterbox. It really made me value everybody in society that I took for granted before.
yeah. And
And
I think
however,
there's I think there's something that schools um, because I think, well, I've got personal experience of this at the moment. A school that's viewed as being exceptionally good is, in my view, is not very good at connecting that with its community. So it's like all the kids go to the school, they're taught there, they're probably taught well, but actually there's a definite lack of engagement with the wider community. So in a sense, I think for me it was always around going back to early years. The best place to start is what the child's own experience is, and that's actually their natural environment around them, where it is. Why is the school here? What's outside the school? And that actually I feel is lost in some of these schools where they don't want to fully embrace that community, bring it into their school and make it part of their school, so that actually the school reaches out into the community as well. And that's more than just singing at the local store or whatever at Christmas time. This is around how young people also understand how they can be part of and contribute to their local community. So I think that's something that perhaps those questions don't really get to the heart of as well.
yeah, and I'm going to try and speak in some schools' defences as well, because I agree with you. It's very hard, you think a lot of independent schools who have that natural alumni network. And I've always thought, how do they do that successfully? What makes them do that really well? And why don't state schools do that as well? And some state schools do have their alumni, whether it's a Facebook page and things, but not all of them. But you go to most independent schools and they will have an alumni.
Yes,
So
yes,
that might be a traditional kind of status societal thing, I'm sure. Um, but yeah, if you think of your toughest schools where you've seen a bit of religious hate and things like that, and all the other headaches that you have going on in schools day to day, adding community on is often, I've always viewed community in my school experiences as not taken seriously enough, or
yeah,
a bolt on, or there might be one member of the SLT, if you've got a large leadership team in a secondary school, that might be doing a really good job but struggles to get everyone else on board. And it's a bit of a bit piecemeal, a bit part thing, like kids go to the choir and they go and sing at the local church, then
yeah,
three kids go and help the local scouts hand out some food, and it might happen once a year, but other than that, the rest of the school don't really know. But some schools that get it right with networks, communications, newsletters, bringing MPs into school, there's lots of things going on. But I think there's an opportunity to be a lot more strategic about it. And I'm working with an organisation at the moment called Let's Localise, and they've got a great program where they allow schools to build their own hub. It's a bit like building your own professional Facebook page without using Facebook. And, I run my own business. So I could say, look, I'm in the area. What schools need help? Do you want some books, some resources? If I was doing a particular service, whatever it might be, I'm on that network and the schools can use the resources in the local area as and when they need. And I think in today's world of technology, there's a massive gap and a need for that still, I think.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. There used to be the school's curriculum award, which was funded by, I think I think it was the Jerwood Prize, which actually was given as the funding for the project.
Right.
That the school's curriculum award was very. It really did highlight those schools that have reached out and actually integrated the curriculum fully into the child's learning. And vice versa. So, and for me, we've had a guy on here before, Alwyn Pugh,
Mhm.
former HMI. He was the assessor, the school's curriculum award assessor, when we went for that award. And
Okay.
it was a real, for me, probably one of the proudest moments was getting that award, because it said so much about what our school was about at the time.
Can I ask Frank, who Who was driving that? Was it you as the head, or did you have a
No,
certain?
it was us. I mean, I was very fortunate on the second headship. Went to a school that in an area quite close to where I am at the moment in Poynton, but there was a really lively arts view on what the broader experience for children was going to be. So, and that was generated very much by the secondary school as well. I had a very active music department, very active contemporary dance department as well. And that all fed down into the primary. So there was a lot, I think I said it a couple of weeks ago, we had projects which we started in primary and we carried those on into secondary. So, every kid took all their work from the primary up to the secondary on the Bubbles project.
Yeah,
That was then the first term of secondary was that. It was, and primary teachers went up and taught in year seven, years, and secondary teachers came down into year six. All of this was around just trying to, to draw out what we could from within the local environment, and actually it was just a sense of a town's education community coming together,
mhm,
for all of the children, and it's, to me it was an uplifting, a remarkable experience, and personally changed me as well, and what my view of education was all about.
right.
And it was, it was a great experience. Having said that, the first school that I was head of, it was a really tough area, and we all had to stick together. But actually, the most creative elements of how we developed the curriculum occurred then. So uh,
Right. And
I
that second school, that primary and secondary, were they on one site or were they
no,
just very close
no,
to each?
no. And we had a what's called a federation. So we had, I think, 5 or 6 primary schools all federated around the secondary school. And we were
Right.
lucky that most of the kids went to the local secondary school, which helped.
Yeah.
We didn't lose many children to the private sector. I remember one of the proudest moments is when my office was quite close to where the reception area was, where the parents used to wait to collect the kids. And I heard one of the parents say, "What's great about this school is that you get a private education, but you don't have to pay for it." And I remember I thought, and actually that really hurt me a lot.
Right.
It really hurt me a lot. That this wasn't about private or state. This is about trying to create a quality
Just a
experience.
good
You know.
education. Yeah.
So yeah, and actually, what's one really nice is, and we all experience this, is when young people go off, and that and that you've influenced their journey in what they do. So when you get a principal ballet dancer, male ballet dancer, coming from sending me a message from Berlin to say, the work you did on contemporary dance at Lower Park, that's my career now.
Yeah. Amazing.
All of that, and I know these are little nuggets, but I had a similar experience only yesterday when we went to a local shop where regarding some blinds for our house, and the woman who served us, her partner was a former pupil at our school, so it was really just understanding what he was now doing and how he wanted his children to go to that school because of the sort of type of education that they had under our leadership, which has been preserved now.
Yeah. In fact,
So yeah,
when I'm occasionally
I'll
in
go with you on
London,
about this forever.
on my travels, I have bumped into some students, as a hotel manager or at the Bet Show, and they're now a teacher, and it is a fabulous part of the full process of
It
teaching.
is.
See how your students are getting on as
It's
adults.
when their children want to go to the school that you were.
Yeah, and if you're
That
still
is,
there as
oh,
well, and
wow.
you're teaching their
Anyway,
kids.
let me finish because I just want to get because we've been chatting for about 35 minutes. Is what's caught my eye this week is that um, I and Professor Colin Richards have embarked on another consultation. It will be our last, called the Alternative Big Consultation, and it's about the consultation Ofsted is doing about the new inspection framework and the report card. And again, we did the Alternative Big Listen because when Ofsted did its Big Listen, the words, the questions were worded in such a way that they didn't really give you the definitive answer. So it was very open, and actually they avoided some of the questions, like for example, should we have single or two-word judgments? Well, they avoided that in the alternative big in the big listen. So when I tried to complete the current consultation, they've fallen foul of it again. So it's for us, it's going to allow lots of comments to be made in comment boxes, And actually, from that will come probably some interesting stuff for Ofsted. But actually, what it doesn't do is give a definitive view as to whether or not this proposal is a good proposal or not. And our consultation does that. But also, similar, another point to it is that in part two of it, we actually just throw out some stuff and just say, well, this is because this is what it could look like. It's not a model. It's there's and it's not a cherry picking, but basically, Ofsted's so up against it on the timeline to deliver in November that actually, unless they say we can't do it in November because the criticism of the current consultation is so bad, but if they hold the line, they're going to be ending up embarking on a consultation with an inspection, sorry, that actually I think it's probably fair to say has landed quite poorly. So I think one of the thing for me was always around when involved in Ofsted development of frameworks, you've got to take the profession with you, and that's not everybody, but it's a bit like policing. Unless the police have the respect of the community that they're policing, actually it won't work. And I think we've got a danger here now that actually we could end up with a framework or inspection methodology that quite a lot of people within the profession don't feel confident about, and inspectors then embark on that. And actually, I think that's going to be a pretty difficult place to either to be inspected from or to be an inspector of that framework. So I think that's what we're trying to do anyway, and we'll see what happens.
Looking at the Twitter exchange, though, whenever they're questioned about something that the profession feels is wrong, they go back to, but parents tell us that's what they want.
Yeah, but it goes back to the point that Ross is saying, about teaching.
Yeah, well, if the aim's fairness and more detail for parents, and more sub judgments and stuff, the detail, more detail doesn't mean more accuracy or more fairness, I think. And I think it's 76% of parents want sub judgments, and it seems they're fixated on delivering that message, regardless if industry professionals, academics say otherwise, or even ridiculous sources and abundance of academic research that grading in some respects can be unreliable or perpetuates inequality. I've got lots of research I could signpost, but yeah, we can get to the grades or not grades, and I've always advocated for meeting standards and not yet meeting standards.
Well, we support that.
But one key question I'd like to ask is how many opinions will it take in consultation to say against for Ofsted to actually do a U-turn? Because if the entire, I'm sure there's some teachers out there that favour the report card system proposals, but I suspect the majority are against it. And if we all submit our views, are Ofsted just committed to this because it's what parents want?
I'm going to say something now. I don't think I'm in breach of the Official Secrets Act or any sort of code
Go on, say it.
Signed up against in the civil service. But let me word it carefully. I think what Ofsted will do is they will be looking daily at these results, and they will be pushing harder for parents and carers to make comments. They'll be reaching out to them, because that will be the mantra. This has happened in the past, and they will be engaging with others to ensure that they get a percentage which is close to, like the 70% of parents and carers like this, 30% of the teaching stuff don't. We are them, and there's the end of the.
I called out deep dives when they were first published, and then when I saw in the proposals they're getting rid of them, I felt vindicated for sticking my head above the parapet. And there's a blog I've got on my site, the deep dive initial proposals back in 2019, and I see alarm bells with all this kind of multiple sub-judgment grading stuff. The multiple grading categories doesn't remove the problem. It's just going to multiply the problem. It's that reductive grading system that just isn't going to work. Wales aren't crying out in arms now they've got rid of the grading. The Church of England SIAMS inspection system aren't crying out in arms. Finland and Singapore, they have Ofsted, but they don't report grades to the public. They aren't crying out in arms. Well, why are we so fixated with a grade? It's
Even
an
if they went
interesting
to four
question.
grades, Ross, if they went to four grades rather than five, you'd actually be a step closer to met or not met.
Yes, I was hoping we would have got met or not yet met, and I was hoping that Martin being in charge and an ex-head teacher, we might have had a bit of a hope, but it feels like we have gone a
I,
step backwards.
for me, I mean, yeah, for me, the lack of people at the top who are rooted in inspection is a problem. Now,
Not a lot of people know that in the legislation, I think it's 1992 of how Ofsted report to government, the HMCI can choose how to report.
yes,
So it might be Phillipson at the top, spouting all the report card references, but I respect Phillipson, but she is just another
yeah. I
person
mean,
at the
she's
top.
not going to know the detail of this issue. I mean,
No, no,
you
she
do
won't.
need
She won't know the detail.
you
So
need people within Ofsted, and you need advisors within the DFE.
yeah, and Martin will he'll know the details. So he's his head's on the block in some respects with making this call.
Yeah,
I'm not confident it's going to work.
no,
Not
No.
I think this idea. I mean, when we did I'm going to finish now. When we did the alternative big listen, we had was it nearly 90%, over 90% said we should get rid of the one or two word judgments, and we included that question because Ofsted didn't.
yes,
Now we have, as Ross is saying, we have replaced that overall effectiveness adjustment with a series, many
40.
more other areas for judge where we're making and we're putting them on a report card. Whereas before, in the report, it might have been the overall effectiveness grade which was highlighted, and the subgrades you would have to have dug into the report to find it. Here, as soon as you go on to the report card page, they're going to be there. And there's going to be, honestly, I would not want to inspect in a school where you're taking anything down to the lower grade. You know, whereas before you would have sat with perhaps the overall effectiveness grade being above a line, and you could have a few weaknesses within it. Here, any weakness is going to be a battle,
Hmm.
and this is the point I think for me is, if you're rooted in inspection, then you understand the dynamics of getting that decision over a line in a meeting with governors and trustees. It's going to be awful.
Now, here's a question, Frank. As a former inspector, you're now going to provide up to 40 possible
I
judgments in
know.
a day and a half. How confident are you of doing that?
Zero. I have absolute, and again, those go
It
on the report
becomes
card.
guesswork, Ross,
It
because
does. Yeah.
we've done that, except for we had that many judgments, but we had a week with a team of about five or six inspectors.
My greatest fear is we're just pushing great teachers out the system overseas and great head teachers out the system as a
Yeah,
result of
I
just an
can't understand why
inaccurate.
they can't see that connection. I just don't understand that. And that's not about wanting to be soft on inspection. If a school is not providing an adequate education for its pupils, we need to call it out.
Yeah,
So,
all for high standards. It's not what's that phrase, soft bigot for standards or whatever it is. No, I want high standards, but I don't want silly nonsense grades that
yes,
are misleading or inaccurate. So the
I
question
think
is, what's the
didn't
alternative?
Ken Robinson sort of shouted that out when they said somebody came in and said, "Yes, we want to raise standards." He said, "Well, who doesn't?" I've never seen anybody come in to say, "I want
Yeah,
to lower standards,"
yeah.
but
exactly.
it's the method by which you think you're doing it seems to be draconian in many ways, and there's no need. What's the percentage of schools that are actually fail? Is it about
Well, at the
5%?
moment, no, at the moment, the number of schools failing is very, very low. It's at an all-time low. So the proportion is somewhere at the moment it's about 1 or 2%. In
And
my day, it was about five or
you're
six.
always going to get this, and then we've got this stuck school nonsense
Yeah, I
again. Well,
know.
let's get into the details of why these schools are stuck. Let's look at the IDACI grades again and
Yes,
poverty.
yeah, I know.
What
Yeah, I was going to say, let's replace it with schools in difficult circumstances because those are the same schools.
Yeah, right. Well,
Yes. Well,
on
I
that
guess
note,
one thing that I always think about, just a final point for me, when you think, I haven't softened on Ofsted, but my views changed since I stopped being a deputy head. That they have an important place in the system. You think about care homes, prisons, and teachers have to think beyond their school as well in
yeah,
Ofsted. So what I've not yet understood or taken time to read is how the report card manifests itself in prisons and social care settings. So I'd like to learn that a little bit more and see if that's the case. I don't know, maybe you know yourself, but yeah, I think it's important to consider that when we think about everything Ofsted.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I just think Ofsted needs to think about itself as having a professional conversation with schools about how well they're doing. And if we start from that point, we can then develop a scorecard or whatever for parents.
What impact does Ofsted have on your well-being? We were a bit scared to ask that question during an inspection, aren't we?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Stan hasn't thrown the buzzer at us yet.
No.
But that,
ready.
there it is there. Thank you, Ross, for joining us again. And
My pleasure.
thank you everybody for watching and listening. And we'll be back next week with edition number 218. Can't believe it. Anyway, here we go.
Bye, everyone.
And just the dog is?
Yeah, Bella, she's here.
Bella there. What an amazing dog. Sat through all of that. So that's amazing. Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Stan.
Bye,
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.